I'm joined today by Ems Hancock. Hello, Ems.
Hi, Andy. Thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, we got to know each other a little bit because of a mutual friend in Deborah Green from Redeeming Our Communities.
Yes, indeed. What a beautiful human she is. And
She is
yeah,
fabulous.
she's one of the reasons that we were in Manchester, actually. Yeah, that's a good story.
We're thanking her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Let's just go straight into what you're doing at the moment. I mean, work, day job, life stuff. What is it that you do that fills the bulk of your time?
Very good question, Andy. So I'm a mum of four. So I have four kids who are 21, and then I've got twins of 19, and then I've got a little girl of 15. So big important part of my life is my family. Married to a guy called John who works in the media. And my day job is actually that I'm a wellbeing and business coach, and I work in eight different businesses slash charities in that field. And I also have private clients. So I spend quite a lot of my day doing this, talking to people on Zoom, but also just holding space for people. So sometimes, as I'm sure you can imagine, you ask one question and 40 minutes later, the person goes, "Oh, did I talk then? Did I talk for quite a long time?"
The hazard of the job is that I like to chat, so this is good discipline to actually listen to other people, which I love to do. But I can
Mm.
fill a space as well because that's
Come
the day
on.
job, right? Twins. Let's just go there.
Okay.
What's it like being a parent of twins? Because I've got three boys; they're very different ages. What is parenting with twins like?
Wow, great question. So, when Sam was born, who was our eldest, he was one. I was still feeding him when I found out I was pregnant with two. And so it was that whirlwind of, oh my gosh. And one of my brothers wrote me a card and it said, having twins after one is like going from owning a dog to running a zoo. And that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like this bonkers moment of, wow, we're just outnumbered at all times. So we really had to lean into the Holy Spirit. We had to lean into our church community, um, and just like really pray that God would somehow bless our parenting and help us to extend grace to ourselves and to them. And it's been really fun, but I won't lie, the first few years were a blur.
I know when we went from one, you have your first child, it's a bit of a culture shock. We can grasp that without kids. Number two comes along, all of a sudden you're thinking, well, there's two of us and there's two of them, so it's okay. But as you pointed out, you went from one to three. When we went from two to three, that was a big shock.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
had no real kind of nice,
No,
gentle, gradual thing, was it?
no. And so I think one of the things that it really taught me in my faith journey is that actually asking for help is not a sign of weakness. And I basically, Andy, people said to me, "Do you need anything?" And I'd be like, "Yes." It was like whatever you can offer me. Can you take my child to the park? Can you clean my glasses? Can you hold me when I cry? Whatever it was, when people offered me something, I was like, 100% I'm in. And I think before that, I'd been a little bit self-referential. I'd been somebody who was like, I just want to cope on my own. I want to come across like I know all the answers, like I've got it all together. And I realized when I had three very small children under two, wow, actually, raising kids is a team sport, and I need my team.
Absolutely. It's interesting over the years when people have said, "Can we help you?" I guess earlier on, I'd be thinking, no, I should be able to handle this. I should be able to cope. And with a little
Exactly.
bit of maturity and wisdom and a few brick walls that you walk into, you realize when someone says, "Can I help you?" Actually, my first response is, "Are you sure?"
Yes.
Because if you had this as well, when someone offers you help, but it's very specific and it's the bit you don't need, and then you
Yes.
feel bad thinking, "But I don't
Yes.
need that. But I
Yes.
need this."
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I learned in that season of my life, and I'm still learning it now, and I'm 52, is that actually when we ask someone for help, we show our vulnerability, we show our authenticity,
Hmm.
and that builds bonds with people, doesn't it? When we show up and we say, I don't need you, that builds brick walls, like he said. And so, what I'm trying to remember and like try and teach my kids and try and help my clients with is actually vulnerability is strength. Vulnerability is about creating more relationship, more abilities to have that kind of trust built. Um, And so I have to remind myself of that because I still like to do things by myself, if I'm honest. I still like to be seen as a competent woman. But actually, if we really get to know Ems, Ems needs people.
It's fascinating, though, isn't it? You just picked a really important point. We see vulnerability as a weakness, but actually, it really, really isn't. And in
Mm.
society, so many people are trying to make it on their own and find that independence and be able to cope. But one of
Mm.
the things I love about the Christian faith in particular is it actually creates a dependence upon other people. Come and join the family. You need one another. We are all part of one body. And it's actually quite countercultural because when I
Mm.
think about faith, Bible, community, it's actually about depending upon other people,
Yeah.
which is almost the antithesis of society when you need to cope on your own, have the money for your mortgage and your rent and everything else. It's almost the opposite. I don't know what you think on that.
Yeah, I think you're so right. And Jesus, it's a bit like the Lionel Richie song, Dancing on the Ceiling. Jesus is dancing on the ceiling. He's upside down. He's countercultural. He's not like the world. And so what that means for us as people of faith is that, yeah, we have to think about giving when we don't have very much money. We have to think about serving when we don't have very much time. We have to
Mm.
think about loving when we don't want to love. We have to think about what it looks like to live in opposite land. And for me, as a person of faith in my world, often people don't treat me particularly well in a well-being setting because they're stressed or they're upset. They might say something rude or difficult. And it's about how can I live in opposite land? How can I treat you with the grace and the kindness? How can I dance on the ceiling in your life and help you to do the same?
I want to focus a bit more on what you're doing, but just before we go backwards in time for you, what does well-being look like for you in terms of how you're trying to help other people? Because I think we have this attitude of what it might mean, but what does it mean for you?
I think so much of well-being for me is about self-compassion. And self-compassion is about leaning into what's painful. It's not kind of pushing it down, a little bit like I say this quite often to my clients, but a little bit like if you play with a child in a swimming pool with a ball, what can sometimes happen is they want to submerge the ball and they want to see what happens to it. And it's a bit like that with our emotions. If we push down our needs or our desires or our emotions for too long, what's going to happen is that ball is going to smack you in the face, or it could smack someone else in the face. And so for me, well-being is about knowing where my emotions sit. So understanding that I've got emotions, that there's two parts of the word emotion. There's the part that says E and the part that says motion. And that the E part for me is the M's, like I am M's, and that's what I'm feeling. But the motion part's really important. My emotions need to move. They need to come out of me. And in order for them to come out of me, I need to really let them. So it's a bit like that ball. I want to let that ball be seen by myself and by others. I want to be understood. I want to be seen. I want to be valued, but I also want to help other people to have that well-being and that self-compassion, which looks at ourselves and says, is there something wrong? Is there something I'm finding hard? What's the next right thing for me to do in this moment?
The idea of the ball is great analogy. It's almost like you do this for a living because it's a really good example of emotions. Because of course, the more we push down, the greater the volatility, the greater the unpredictability of the fact that we know it's going to erupt.
Yeah.
It's like you do this for a living. That's good. That
Yeah, thank you.
you're
Thank
very
you. I'll
welcome.
ta I'll take that.
You'll take that. Let's go back. You were talking about faith quite a bit in terms of who you are and what you're doing.
Mhm.
Where did faith enter your life that it wasn't just something that you did, but it was something far more personal?
So I grew up in a Christian family, but I know that a mouse born in a biscuit tin is not a biscuit. So you have to kind of do your own work, don't you? So I think that as a 15-year-old, I went away to a youth camp, and there I met this incredible man of God who was quite young. He was in his 20s, and he was my youth leader for the week. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's something different about you. And it was his charisma. He's a very quiet man, but he had this incredible assurance about where he was going when he died, not just where he was on earth, but where he was going when he died. And I remember, Andy, just thinking about Steve and thinking, gosh, you are really sure of something that I'm really unsure of. So that was the first thing that made me kind of think, oh, there's something missing from my
Mm.
life. And later on that day, what happened was we'd had a conversation about heaven, and Steve had said to me, when I go to heaven, I want to be an artist because I can't draw and I can't paint, and that's the thing I really want to do. And we had this beautiful conversation about heaven, and I said to him, I'd love to be sure about where I'm going. And he said, well, as Christians, this is the hope, this is the belief, and this is what we trust in. So it was a beautiful conversation and one I haven't forgotten. Later on that day, I was walking down to the lake to meet up with some of the other young people. And it was a Christian kind of venue where we were. And next to the roadside, there were these vendors of different kind of Christian merchandise. And there was some Christian t-shirt sellers. So I bought a Christian t-shirt for myself, first and last time I've ever done that. And the Christian t-shirt said, "Don't be caught dead without Jesus." And it was quite a kind of statement for me to put that on that day. I went down to the lake. I had a brilliant time. We were splashing about, having fun. And then Steve took some people swimming. And very, very sadly, during that period of time, Steve was pulled under the water and got caught in the reeds. And he was pulled out dead. And so I'd had a conversation with this wonderful Christian man in the morning about the fact that he wanted to go to heaven and that he knew he was going to heaven and that he wanted to be an artist in heaven. And as I looked at his body in this boat next to a lake in Keswick, I realized that that man had just gone to heaven. And I was wearing a t-shirt that said, "Don't be caught dead without Jesus." And so, as you can imagine, that was a real moment for me. And I felt like God was saying, "Are you for me? Are you with me on this?" And it was powerful, tangible moment of faith. And I know a lot of other people who became Christians that day or recommitted their lives to God that day. And we had in the evening a lovely worship leader who, name you'll know, Martin Smith, was a very young man at that stage. And he came and he brought his guitar and he just led us in very quiet worship. And hundreds of people went forward because Steve had become an artist.
I mean, where'd you go with that one? That's a real beautiful story. But I love that even in that guy's, even at his death, his life at his death was actually winning people to Jesus. I mean, what a beautifully perfect example of a guy that's following God with all that he has. Excuse me, that can make an impact. That even at his death, people are finding Jesus in what should be just a really, really bad time. Gosh, it's about a bad look. What a terrible situation, which might be natural reactions, but his life and his death was so beautiful. It led people to faith.
Yeah. And, I look back now on that particular day and I heard God say a few things to me that day, one of which was to go back to my school and to do an assembly. And I was like, about Jesus. And I was like, that's kind of terrifying. So I just did not want to do that. And also, I knew that you could only do that if you became head girl. So there was the head girls assembly, and it was like that. I wasn't on the list, so I was pretty safe. I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. But I did think I'm going to speak to my head teacher, and I'm just going to tell her what's happened to me. I'm just going to let her know. She wasn't a person of faith, but she was a person of peace. And so I went into her and I told her what happened. And I said, I'd really like to tell everybody in the school. She said, well, I'm afraid that's not possible because, as you know, we allow that once a year for a head girl. And I said, okay, well, thank you for your time. And I left and I thought, well, there's nothing more I can do. I'm done. I came into school the following morning to find that the head girls list of possible candidates had been changed. And I don't know to this day, she said it was not her, but somebody wrote my name on that list. It might have been an angel in the night, Andy. But somebody wrote my name on that list, which I didn't deserve, by the way, because I was not a head girl material. And it was like an angel had kind of, got a biro in the middle of the night. I don't know which teacher wrote that or which angel wrote that, but she was very, very surprised to be calling me in and saying, your name is now on this list. And I was terrified because I was like, oh, like I promised God I would do the assembly if I became head girl, but knowing that I wouldn't, right? So now I'm going, what the chuff do I do? Because now I've got to actually kind of think about this thing. But I thought, well, don't worry, because the people on the list were the people who like won all the awards. They were there. There was a woman in my, there was a girl in my year. She was called Nirigadini Murugananthanan. Say that in a hurry. Nirigadini Murugananthanan won every single award, right? And she was top of the list. So I was like, Nirigadini's going to get it. It's going to be fine. Nirigadini Murugananthanan did not become head girl. I did. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I've actually got to speak. I've actually got to tell people about Jesus. So my head teacher, bless her heart, Miss Sheila Downs, we love her. She said to me, Emma, in those days, Emma, you have got 10 minutes. Do not go over. 26 minutes later, I got down. And the day started a bit late for everyone. But you know what? I just told my story. And Jesus did amazing things with it,
As he does.
as he does.
I love the idea of the names with a biro.
Yeah, come on.
Because that is something that isn't impossible for me to believe. Because
No.
I remember Daniel praying and an angel interrupting his prayer.
Yeah, come on.
So I have absolutely no issue with that being quite possibly real. We don't know
Yeah,
everything. God
we
frustrates
don't.
the intelligent. So, hey,
Yeah,
I've got no qualms with that whatsoever being a reality.
no, me neither. And I do, I mean, I kept sort of asking people that year, all the different teachers that I had, I was like, did you write my name? And they were like, nope. No one wanted to own it. So it was just really funny. I was like, all right, you don't have to say it quite so quickly, Mrs. Bradley. It's very funny.
But I love how you said, yes, I'll do that, God, because you knew the impossibility was you were never going to do that. So it's like,
I
well, I'm not
know.
lying. I'm happy to do that for you, God, but never going to happen. Not
I
my fault.
know.
You
I
even
know.
went to see a head teacher, but God had other plans, and it seems like He's had other plans with your life quite a lot.
Yeah, he really has. So I've fallen into all kinds of things. Like I always say to my clients, Andy, that life is not a zip, it's a zigzag. So it's not an up and down, it's not an A to B, it's a whoop kind of line. And I've had so many zigzags where I've gone around a corner and gone, where the heck am I going and who's with me? And like, why am I going this way? And then suddenly I've met Jesus on the corner and I've gone, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And then I've gone round another corner and thought, why am I here? Like so many rooms I've been in, I've thought, I don't deserve to be here. Like the head girl thing. Nira Godini, she's probably gutted somewhere lying on a psychologist's couch going, I should have been head girl. That girl got it, right? That girl got it. Why? I don't know why, but I do know that Jesus is with us in those corners of life where we feel like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know why I'm here. I don't deserve to be here. But somehow Jesus finds us in those moments, doesn't he?
I think I need to fill in a little bit of a gap here. So you've found faith, you've got children. Where does your husband John fit into that sort of situation?
So, yeah, this is interesting. So John and I met on a youth camp. So um, I was actually sort of training to be a nun at the time. So yeah, I mean that's funny in itself. I still wear a lot of black and white. I feel very comfortable in black and white. But anyway, I was sort of kind of thinking about being a nun and was kind of really praying into that. And then one of my friends who was organizing youth camp had a speaker, a female speaker, let them down. I think it was they were poorly or they couldn't do it. And so they were like, well, Ems isn't doing anything. She's a nun. She's not going anywhere. So they were like, called me and went, hi, can you fill in for this person? Can you come and do a talk at this youth camp? So I was like, yeah, okay, fine. So I arrive at this youth camp, don't know a soul. You know what it's like when you arrive, everyone knows everybody else. And I was there like Billy No Mates in the corner. And then I saw this guy and he started to make me laugh. And I thought, oh, it's really interesting. Very soon I'm in trouble because I'm like, oh, I'm meant to be a nun. I quite fancy this guy over here. This is awkward. So I had a long chat with Jesus about it. We went for a walk together on Great Yarmouth Beach. And I said, Jesus, I'm not going to lie. I quite like this guy. Bit confused about the whole nun thing. You're going to need to help me out. So what I said was, I was quite direct. I said, if this is the man I'm meant to marry and I'm not meant to be a nun, please can the girl that he's going out with finish with him, like, and be very direct and say, I don't know why I'm ending this relationship, but I know it's what God wants. And then I'll know that he's the guy for me. So fast forward a few months, John rings me very sad to let me know that the girlfriend that he'd been with had ended the relationship and didn't know why, but just felt like it was a God thing. And I did a silent scream on the phone because I was like, well, I'm not meant to be a nun.
And then that changed. Obviously, you got your children came along, which is brilliant. I love the stuff about the twins because I was at school with a couple of twins, and I love their stories about how they used to wind up the parents because they were actually identical twins, both lads,
Yeah,
and they were ridiculously identical.
yeah,
And they used to have a lot of fun with their parents
yeah,
because it was a great hoot.
yeah. I mean, my children are identical boys, but I I prayed, Andy, when they were tiny for a small difference, and the Lord Jesus blessed me because he's given Tom a mole just there.
Oh,
So
that's handy.
they could never get away with it with their mummy. But occasionally they would with their teachers or their friends. They would kind of play games. The worst thing they ever did though was when they were tiny. I was upstairs and they were in the playroom, and I'd got one of those stair gates over the playroom door, so I knew that they were safe. And there was another stair gate at the bottom of the stairs, and another stair gate at the top of the stairs, and I was upstairs in the bathroom. Suddenly there was this three little people arrived in the bathroom. And I was like, oh my word, my life is over. Like I can't even go to the loo by myself. What's happened? And basically they were so happy. They'd basically worked out that if they stood on Sam's tummy, was if he lay down, Tom could reach the gate and Ben could pull the gate. And the three of them, without speaking, had basically ninjaed their way up the stairs. So I was like, that's it. My life is done. I can never wee in peace. I can never write another blog. I can never do anything again because these children will be here. And they were.
um, One of my lads learned to climb out of the cot, which was kind of impressive
Yes.
because he made no sound.
Mm.
That was terrifying. Like one of them had done it, and he would fall down every time. You'd hear a thump, and you'd run upstairs, and there he was grinning at you on his bottom.
Oh my
Another
God.
one was absolutely silent. It was like a ninja thing. He just silently crawled out, and you think, how are you at the gate? You were in bed, and you are too short. Somehow we never knew how, but he got out
Yeah.
silently.
Yeah. And that happened to one of mine. I went upstairs one day, and you know how you do as a parent, you just, the doors for the children's rooms were open, and I was just checking, just going, oh, bless them, they're asleep. Just did that for my son Tom's room. No Tom. Uh, you are an 18-month-old baby and you're physically not there. What the heck is going on? So I go into his room, I look under his cot. I thought maybe like, did I put him in Ben's bed? Was I like super tired? Have I put them into and literally, and then I heard this little voice, hey mummy. And I turn around, he's on the wardrobe. He's
Pussies.
just he's climbed out, he's scooched along the shelf, which wasn't very strong. He's gone along the radiator and he's climbed up onto the wardrobe. And he's so happy with himself. He's sitting there just having a great time, uh, but quite aware that he can't get down. Don't
Yes,
know how long he was there for. And again, I thought, again, my life is over. There's nothing I can do. It was a very scary moment.
yes, as it is, and with the silent child out of the cot. Yes, I've had that one.
Mm.
Let's just move on to what you're doing today. Then, so we've
Mm.
talked a bit about well-being and how you see that. How did you end up doing that? Because it's something that you can't just do. There will be a journey. So, how did you find yourself doing what you're doing today with well-being for folk?
Yeah, so again, not a zip, very much a zigzag. And I think that how it sort of started is I've always been one of those people who just care very deeply, right? So whenever I meet someone, whether that be in a Sainsbury's queue or on the bus, there will always be, my children call it, that they just say, Mummy, I don't know how you do it, but somebody is always telling me their life story, right? Sometimes it's a bit awkward because you're in an airport or and there's somebody sobbing all over you and they're like, Mum, hurry up, we're just getting on that plane. And I'm just like, just need to pray for this lady. Um, so it's always been that way with me ever since I was really small. But I think what God did is after I became a teacher, so that was my first career, I went back into school after I had the children for a while, but I went back in as a well-being person. I went back in mental health. And because I'd written a few books about kind of ways to help yourself, one of the head teachers of a local school had read it and was like, "We've got loads of anxious kids. Can you come in and help us kind of chat to them at um, during lesson times and stuff, and we'll send in those children that we're quite concerned about." So I did that for about 4 years in a senior school, and in conjunction with a primary school as well, I did the same thing. And I realized, as we do sometimes, that I was having great conversations with these young people and these very small children, but actually, God was also bringing me all the teachers. And the staff were coming in after school, or they were phoning me at weekends, or parents were calling me. And I started to realize, wow, I'm actually really enjoying having conversations with people about their wellness. And then I was chatting to a guy at church about it, and he was like, "I know what you need to do." And it was just this moment in him. He was like, "You need to train as a coach." Um, and I'd already trained as a listener and I'd done some mental health training, but it was almost like his word to me was like the next thing. It was the next right thing. So I thought, well, I can't afford to do that. But very beautifully, 3 weeks later, I'm sitting in Salford Uni starting my coaching course. And it was just one of those things that, just happened. That was 3 years ago. And I started off my business by begging three people to let me coach them for free. I was like, "Please let me learn." Um, so I had three friends who very kindly let me like be my guinea pigs for me. And then I've grown my business from there.
The thing about mental health, I mean, you said you were reaching out to children, but and yet there were the teachers. I had to go through, okay, it's right, CBT PTSD. So I did 18 months of that.
Wow.
And the lady that was working with me, she was terrified because she was training. She was like right at the end. She needed one more
Wow.
thing, and I was it. And when we got to the end of it, being careful on what I say, but this was childhood trauma. And
Mm.
she was terrified of what was going on because it looked like I was becoming more and more depressed and suicidal. And it's like, that's normal because you're going back to the old pain and it's all healthy. So it was being, assessed by
Mm.
a manager. But when she finished with me, she said, when I started this, I was terrified, not of me, but of what I was coming to talk about. And I've just been given a job working with children who have gone through exactly what you've gone through, but I'll be the first point of contact because you gave me confidence. What she didn't know is I had three people praying for me every single week, not just for me, because that seemed like a good idea, but I said, can you pray for the person who's working with me as well? Because I want them to see
Wow.
Jesus through what we're doing. And
Wow.
one of the things that they did, why am I showing this? I don't know. Well, one of the things they did was you have to find like a safe memory. So when you're going through the therapy, when it's getting too much, you go and remember this thing. But the thing that I remembered that was my safe place, as she called it, was the play area at the back of a church where there were some toys where I used to go to play as a kid. So at the end of it all, she said, I know I can do this because I've watched you go from okay down quite a lot, very scary, and then look at you now. You're peaceful, you're happy, and I'm going to go and work with children who've just been through what you went through, 35 years earlier. And I loved how
Wow.
my pain and my vulnerability was enough to equip her to go and work with children. So I love how God uses who we are, who we were, and then
Mm.
transforms it. And that's clearly what he's done with you from your time in teaching and then going back writing books. And then now you're working with people. What's the biggest benefit that you can see from people who have spent time with you? Is that kind of it really helps them because what they've learned to do is this? Is there a really good, simple, positive outcome that you see?
Thank you first of all for sharing so honestly with us. It's a really beautiful story, and I'm really grateful to hear that because as a coach, we love to hear that the impact that kind of therapy has for people. I think for me, in terms of the impact that I see on a day to day, it so varies because I work with people in very different circumstances. So my call first thing this morning was with a lady who's just had a stroke, and it was my first session with her post stroke, and so her voice was very different. Um, and it was a real privilege to be able to support her um, as we talked about the very difficult ways in which she's managing, but I felt an incredible sense of joy that I could journey some of that with her, that she
Mm.
wasn't alone as she was processing some of the harder parts of that journey. And so I think it's about coming alongside people and helping them be able to hear their own voice, number one, but also, even if they're not people of faith, being able to hear God's voice. And I often pray, I always pray with my Christian clients, in the sessions, but I'll often pray beforehand or afterwards with my clients who don't have faith, that somehow something of what I share will have a flavor that lasts with them throughout the day, and they keep tasting something and thinking, oh, what was that? What was that thing that she said? Um, and that's my prayer, is that I will do people good in Jesus' name.
I think we have to come back to one of your earliest things you said about Deborah and Manchester.
Mm.
So that therefore means you weren't in Manchester before, but you are now, I'm guessing. So why are you in Manchester, and how does Deborah fit into that?
So I'll go back a little bit. So my husband, John, worked for the BBC for many years, 18 years in London, and we lived in Kent at that time when the children were tiny. But we'd always prayed that we'd move north. Now you can tell from my voice, I'm not a southerner. I'm a northerner. I was brought up in Liverpool, so spent the first sort of few years of my life being very Scouse. It got slightly beaten out of me when I moved down south because my friends were a bit more London. Do you know what I mean? Um, but I think what happened was I was involved in quite a lot of worship as a younger adult, and had come to a conference up here back in the days when I was singing, and there was a worship leader who people will have know really well, called Noel, and he had kind of asked me to come to this worship conference that he was running in the city. And Deborah was there, and I'd known Deborah for a few years because of Spring Harvest stuff. We'd done some leadership things in the same space, but I didn't know her, if you know what I mean. I knew her enough to smile, but not enough to have a coffee. And she kind of comes over to me. And you know what Deborah's like? She's incredibly prophetic. And she said, you are carrying an Esther baby. And I was like, okay. So I was pregnant, but I wasn't showing at the time. And I was carrying a girl, and that I believed was a girl, but I didn't actually know. I hadn't had the scan, and I had chosen the name Esther. So she had my attention.
Yes.
I mean, she did quite well there, Andy, didn't she?
That's pretty good.
So I thought, yeah, I think I'll give you 3 out of 3, whoever you are. So I thought, well, Lord, obviously you want me to listen to this lady. So I was talking to her about Manchester, and I said we've been really praying about moving to Manchester, and she was like, "You need to come to our church because our church needs women like you. Our church needs prophetic people." So I was like, okay, what's your church called?" And she mentioned the name of this church, which was called Ivy, and where she and her husband had been for many years, because her husband Frank was the pastor of Ivy for a while. And yeah, so she kind of it was almost like a line in the sand moment. And then when the BBC said to my, husband and all his department, we're moving everybody to Manchester, we were like, because it had already been written. It was like, this is the story. And we didn't have to find a church because Deborah Green had said, you're coming to our church. We didn't have to choose a name for our daughter. I mean, she just did a lot of homework for us. It was great. So we arrived in Manchester. We went immediately to this church, and we were like, these are our people. This is our church. And it was like God set us up from that moment.
So how long ago is that now? Because we're 2025. When did you move to Manchester?
16 years.
16 years.
Yeah.
So he's definitely home now.
It's so home. It's so home. And I think that's one of the things I love about Manchester is my husband's a southerner, so he's from Essex. And I did say to him, when we move north, you will realise things take longer here because people talk. So he was like, oh, I don't know if I believe that. We went bowling, right? We'd been in Manchester 4 minutes, but we took the kids bowling. And I still remember this now. We walked in, and the woman who gives you your shoes and does the little spray, she was like, how old's your baby? And I said, oh, she's 5 months. She went, do you know what? She looks really like my little niece. Let me show you a picture. And she's like this. She's going, right, okay. No, that's not a good one. Hang on a minute. John's like that. Hurry up with the shoes. She honestly, 25 minutes later, she was going. And then what was really funny was she was teething. And John's like, I just want the shoes. And then this lady goes, Janice, come over here and see this little girl. Doesn't she look like my niece? So we then had Janice coming over. And it was just one of those days where I was like, and then as we got our shoes, I just went to John, see, Northerners, friendly.
Yes, they invite you for a second cup of tea, and they mean it,
And they mean it, indeed.
which is fun. We've moved around the country, but sort of going down about south. There's some lovely folk, but generally they wouldn't necessarily offer you for a second cup of tea. Or if they
Um,
did, you'd be thinking, "Is this a sign of the door?" Sometimes, but not quite. But north, I mean,
yeah, yeah,
I spent a year in Manchester, and the
yeah,
night isn't it? It is that everybody's like, "Come on out, come and have a cup of tea. Let's have another one. Let's have another brew."
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just that culture.
It is, and I mean, I loved living down south. I had some incredible friends there, and we had a great church. But I think there is something about the way people relate in the north that
Mm.
is people have just got a bit more time. And quite often I'll be, walking up the road where we live in Trafford, and somebody will come just kind of start talking to me and tell me something about their lives. And it's just completely normal for someone to go, oh, I really like them shoes. Where did you get them from? And you're just
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay, let's have a chat about my shoes. Whereas you don't normally get that in London.
No, I like going on the tube in London and smiling and talking to people. It's quite good fun.
Yes, I've been that odd bod too.
I like doing that. Right. Thank you. If people wanted to connect with what you're doing now, if the well-being, they're thinking, oh, that sounds quite good.
Mm.
How do they actually find out more about what it is you're doing?
Um, well, yeah, so I don't have a website for my coaching, but I do have one. It's kind of old school, but I have one for my blogs that I've written,
Oh, cool.
which is emshancock.com. They can find books that I've written on Amazon. So I've written probably 5 or 6 books now, which are on Amazon. So people can find, if you just type in Ems Hancock, you'll find me. Um, but I am on LinkedIn as well, if people are business people and they want to see what I'm up to. I don't really use social media at the moment, but if people are desperate to find me, they can work quite hard and they'll find something.
And of course, we met first time properly was I'm gonna get the name's going to come out wrong. Is it artistry? Is that the
It
right
is
word?
artistry. Yeah, well done.
I'm shocking at names. It's not a
10
great thing in
points.
my job, but names are terrible. So artistry, which we came to, which was brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah, so artistry um kind of began a couple of months ago, and you came to the first one, didn't you? But it was a kind of a really beautiful thing where John and I at the beginning of the year both independently thought, wow, we could do with a real community gathering of people in Christians in media arts and entertainment in Manchester. And what we didn't expect was for people to drive 2.5 hours to come to it, like yourself.
Yep.
But we had a number of people who drove from quite distance, because they just felt like, I need this community. I need to know what this is all about. Um, and so we've only done two. We're doing them 6 times a year, so sort of twice a term, if you like. But they have been really precious moments of God breaking in and encounter with Him, people feeling encouraged, people being reignited with the passion that He's given them, and people feeling hopeful rather than, wow, this is a tough landscape. So we're really excited about what God's going to do. We've got our next one, September 29th. So we're really looking forward to that.
I was gutted we couldn't get to the second one because the first one was such a good, but it's unique in such a really beautiful way that's gentle as well. I don't know how
Mm,
else to describe that. That's
mm.
very inarticulate, but it was just really lovely.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think, when you do start anything new, you don't know what it's going to look like, do you? You don't know the flavor of it. All you know is that God's going to have to do something because we're just humans in a building. And so, like, we just prayed that He would show up and do some stuff, and He did. And it was for me, it was really lovely because I didn't have to say very much. I didn't, I kind of whispered to people, have you got a word right now? And they were like, yep. So for me, it was like almost like a facilitator role rather than a leading role.
Mm.
And that really helps, I think, if you've got somebody who, a team of people you can trust to kind of hear from Jesus, for others, which is what we're building, which is wonderful.
Ems, thank you. It's been great just finding out some of your story. I say this a lot, but I love seeing how God, I mean, you talk a zigzag, I could just call it a big weave, but it's how God takes all the seemingly random and unconnected parts of our life, and then you can look back and think they're all connected.
Mm.
It's this sort of circuitous journey that God takes us on, and yet nothing's wasted. Right
Mm.
from the beginning, when you were meeting that guy, Steve,
Mm.
who sadly then tragically died, but yet that's been a really positive blessing for the part of your own Christian faith journey through to the books and the schools, well-being, which is what you're now doing. I love how God always, in such wonderfully beautiful, different ways, takes everything and somehow makes this perfect sort of curvy road upon
Yeah.
which we can walk with Him, and it's glorious. And it's been beautiful to hear how He's done that for your life as well. So, Ems, thank you for your time. It's been precious.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.